Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video we're going to take a look and discuss the spike in leveling, difficulty and scaling beyond level 60. Now depending on what class you are, in the Pandarian remix you will find that you start to struggle a little bit with the leveling, DPS, damage kind of experience beyond level 60, and a lot of this has to do with your own tankiness. So a lot of players will all of a sudden, especially those on classes like priest, mage, feel a lot weaker. And this is because for some reason, I'm not too certain what it is, it's obviously to do with the scaling. Once you get to level 60, obviously your substats and a lot of your stats start to scale down in comparison to the enemies and mobs, and the enemies and mobs take quite a large spike, largely in their damage done. And since a lot of your damage is dependent on your gems, and your gems are dependent on your versatility and your critical strike, the decrease in these stats causes a substantial flux in your DPS, your damage, and just how you do damage. On the other hand, you have a lot of stamina, but you don't have a lot of other stats that make you generally quite tanky, so you start to get hit for a bit more. And this can be a lot more evident if you are by yourself, or specifically in a group of multiple characters between level 60 to 69. You'll also notice this obviously as you hit level 70. But you can see here, I mean, even fighting singular mobs, you can take significant damage. Now, of course, when everything procs, you can still do good damage. Obviously, you still have the gems. There are still spikes in your DPS, but the scaling does take a little bit of a, downturn, so to say. So realistically, at this point, you can start to struggle with things, questing, etc. Now, fortunately, because of the speed of leveling, the EXP boost and things like that, a lot of the times this section doesn't last forever. It can be annoying, but it's not a deal breaker. It's just considerable that you'll probably find between levels around 20 and 50 you feel great, but from beyond 60 you start to feel a bit worse. And this is true even if you're on an alt that is powered up, although that does tend to help. One of these considerable reasons is the substat drop. You'll notice that even though I'm using Eternal and Greater Threads, my substats are not increasing dramatically at level 67, and this is the case from around 60 beyond. Even with the bigger thread gain, your substats don't tend to progress, even with up-to-date gear, beyond that 20 to 25% bracket. And this is part of the cause of why you can feel this kind of decrease in efficiency. The good news is LFG is your friend, whether that's through doing raids or through doing dungeon content, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. LFG is your big friend here. The reason being is the scaling of all the other players will tend to cancel out your own deficiencies. Raiding is one of the great ways to do this. However, it's probably the worst way to do this, but a good thing with raiding is that it gives you gear, which will help you later on when you hit max level and need to kind of upgrade your overall gear. And it also does continue to give you EXP boosts, but I'd say from around 65 onwards you don't need these realistically to level efficiently. Maintaining your gear also helps. So keeping your gear up to date in terms of item level is a big component of this. Sometimes you'll find that as you level between 20 and 50, whether you're on an alt, whether you're on your main character, you start to feel the drop off largely because of your gear. A lot of the times not maintaining the item level, upgrading the gear, etc. can tend to keep you a little bit bogged down. The good news, upgrading your gear is very simple. The bad news, upgrading your gear is also expensive. One of the keys to getting to this section is dungeons. There's two reasons why. Firstly, from a net per minute ratio, dungeons remain the best way to level. A lot of the reason of this is because of scaling. Now, if you are joined with a bunch of level 20 characters, even though you are struggling in your level 60 bracket, generally, especially if they are alts, those level 20 characters hard carry your run in terms of DPS. They'll make things super fast. They'll make your dungeon super fast. The caveat to this is that if you are actually playing with friends, so for example, if you're playing with a bunch of other characters that are level 60, the dungeon sucks. It takes a lot longer. And this is because you're all experiencing that same kind of substat waffle at the same time. So, and this is true for raiding, it's true for anything. Generally, if you are with other players, it is going to actually be harder if you're with more than, I'd say, 2 other players, and especially if you're all the DPS. However, if you get lucky and you just get a level 20 twink, of course, which there are a ton running around, dungeons are still by far and away the best way to go. You'll get through this section very easily. If you are still struggling, let's say it's not working out for you with dungeons, maybe the queues are taking too long, you're looking for something to fill up your time, faction quests are a great way to do this. And part of the reason is if you look at the Cloud Serpents, the Golden Lotus, etc., tons of these faction quests don't actually require combat. There are some that do. For example, the one quest I picked up where you need to kill the one minor elite. But generally speaking, you can just skip those and do all of the kind of non-combat, kind of easier quests. These quests, for example, doing all these Golden Lotus ones, took me around 15 minutes, give or take, with a friend. And as you can see, they're giving pretty nigh on close to a level. So they are a good way to fill in that void whilst you are busy leveling. While you're waiting for a dungeon, etc. And they don't require combat, so you don't feel the drop off so badly. Besides that, there's not too much else really to mention. This section of drop off isn't permanent, like I said, and most players will get through it quite easily as long as they just spam some dungeons. And you'll hit level 70, and your power will naturally start to progress upwards as your substats start to exceed their strength, as you start to upgrade your gear, and as you start to fill out your rings and trinkets. The main things that you can do, honestly, during this time period is if you are partying with friends, maybe look at switching one of your characters to a lower level character to assist the others for these last couple levels. But if you follow these tips, you should be more than fine. That's it from me. Bye.